On Monday, 4 p.m., Richard Hoffman from the SCU. On Wednesday, 4 p.m., Erica Lukes in the Skinwalker Ranch Review. On Friday, 1 p.m., special surprise guest. Tuesday, on the Singularity Lab, 4 p.m., Jeremy McGowan, Drones versus UFOs. Thursday, 4 p.m., we'll see you next week. No show. On Friday, 5 p.m., Paradigm Shifts with Cristina Gomez. Come aboard, let's get weird, on the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Welcome to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. It's kickoff shortly here, so get comfy, grab a beverage. I'm rather be squidding. Things are about to get weird. I'd like to thank DOS Tapes for the music here, and thanks to all of you for joining. Looks like we got 39 of you right now, which is amazing. Hey Kevin, hey Dave, and now I've become Get Death. Great to see all the familiar faces here. Did you see Skinwalker today or yesterday? I thought it was a very, very good one. I'll be very interested in the panel's thoughts today. I'm still kind of mad about Louise's 0 science score, if you remember that 2 weeks ago. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. While I was watching episode 5, season 2 of Skinwalker, an odd thought occurred to me. We've mentioned James Cameron a lot, and him possibly having inside sources revealing true information which he might slip into his movies. Usually we're talking about the abyss there, but what about Avatar? So in that movie, the planet is essentially alive, living in harmony with all plant life, acting collectively. And that sort of vegetative collective is actually a real concept. After the movie came out, there was a nature documentary. It was featuring the forest of the Pacific Northwest. There was a PhD in the ecosystem on that documentary, and a quote of hers, still stays with me. She said, "James Cameron must have read my thesis." And she goes on to talk about, the ecosystem here, and the roots of the forest are all completely intertwined, part of an incredibly complex ecosystem involving fungi, bacteria, all sorts of life. And experiments have shown that if you put resources in the root system of a healthy tree out there in the forest, one which needs resources, those resources will actually be diverted far across the forest floor to unhealthy plants which need those resources even more. And just as our bodies are collections of independent cells and bacteria working together in conjunction, the Earth might also be such a system. It might be conscious in ways we can't comprehend. Maybe this is the non-human intelligence behind phenomenon at Skinwalker Ranch and elsewhere. This isn't a wholly baked theory, but once it rises, and if it rises, I may put together a little video and publish it alongside some of my other strange but possible theories on my channel, Rather Be Squiddy. Be sure to visit and subscribe if you haven't already. And be sure to subscribe and ring that bell here if you haven't already. You'll get that ding telling you that 2 hours of amazing content is ahead. And maybe consider canceling that Netflix subscription that you probably don't really watch anymore, and throw a couple of those dollars over at Louise's Patreon. It would be greatly appreciated. We have a great panel lined up today. We're talking about my favorite subjects, UAPs and a spooky ranch out there in Utah. It's going to be a great time today. So let's 4 o'clock on the dot here. Let's get this party started. Your hosts of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Louise Jimenez and Michael Mataluni.
Hello, Rather. Thank you, man,
Hello.
for the warm introduction. We always love seeing your face here. How you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah? You excited for today's show?
Yeah, it's going to be a big one. Skinwalker, I hope to see a better science score this week.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We shall see. Second hour, we're going to be doing Skinwalker review. So stay tuned for that. The first hour is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about Japanese Airline Flight 1628. I almost said 1986. It was Japanese Airline Flight. It happened in 1986. Jazz Shaw wrote an article about it in the debrief, so we're going to talk to Jazz about that. But before we get started, hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFOs. My name's Luis Jimenez. Before we get started, I want to say hello to some people in the chat. We've got John Greenwald from the Black Vault is here. I earlier saw, who was in there? Where'd he go? Jason McClellan was here. What's up, Jason? How you doing, buddy? Kevin Childress in the house, all of these wonderful people. Our show is brought to you by BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. And also, the music is brought to you by Das Tapes. Check out their band camp, link in the description below. Speaking of links, please, link mine, hit it. We've got a Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon it is a monthly way to support the show, so definitely check it out if you like what you're watching. Michael Mataluni is my co-host for the day, as always. Welcome back, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, and I was really excited to see Squidding bring up this idea of the Gaia hypothesis in the first 12 seconds of the show.
Yeah.
That's super deep stuff, and I hope at some point we get into that. So I'm excited for today. I'm excited for Jazz Shaw. I'm excited for all of you here. And then I'm thrilled that we got Greenwald watching, because he's the one who did the real work digging up this information. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it.
No, it's going to be fun. This is one of my favorite cases. It's one that I've never gotten to talk about on the show. So I'm glad that we have somebody in the chat and also somebody on the show that can talk to us about it. And you know, I think this is a case that Michio Kaku tells people to go look at. Like, you know, that's how good it is. So before we get started, just want to remind everybody, we do have a show. Speaking of John Greenwald, on Friday, he's going to be coming on the show. We're going to be talking to him for the first hour. And we've also got, let's see here, no show tomorrow on the Singularity Lab. Mike is out of town. So I'm going to be catching up on some work tomorrow for Friday's show. And also at 5 o'clock, Cristina Gomez has her show, Shifting the Paradigm, right after our show at 1 o'clock on Friday. So be there for that as well. And let's get started. Mikey, you want to do this?
Absolutely. So for those who don't
sorry. Oh, also, we got some other things. We got some. I just saw in the private chat here. We've got branding to talk about. So we are literally putting the final touches on the entire brand new branding of the show. It's going to have some really cool stuff. We're working on some interesting promos behind the scenes. We've got a logo. We've got everything is going to be brand new. And some people have also been asking me about the name of the show. The Unidentified Celebrity Review. Caught in a little flack because the word celebrity's in there. And I'm not really sure why. I'm an actor in Los Angeles. I'm an unidentified celebrity, and I do a review show. Nobody knows who I am. I do small bit parts on television and film, and that's why I called the show that. It's got nothing to do with me trying to be a celebrity. Don't care about that. I just want to talk about UAPs and UFOs and make people aware that, hey, you could call a congressman, you could call, your senator and ask them about UAPs, demand more transparency, have these conversations where we go to the woo-woo, but we always come back to the terra firma reality of what we know is in the sky. And UAPs, UFOs are in the sky. Pilots have chased them. Senators are talking about them. Reports are being written. They're real. So that's what we're talking about here on the show. So if you have any questions about the name of the show, that's why I named it that. So I wanted to straighten that out real quick. But we do have a bunch of new branding. So it's going to be 6. So stay tuned for that. Sorry, Michael. Didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to tell
not
everybody.
at all.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention for everybody who noticed that Erica Lukes is not here today. She will be here next week, next Wednesday. So don't sweat it. She's amazing. We know, we love her. You love her. She will be here. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us today. So
yeah, she had to push back. She had to push it back. She's moving. She's in the middle of a move, and she's like, "Man, my studio isn't set up." She was super excited to have her studio ready. It wasn't ready, so we just pushed it back a week. So she'll be here first hour of next week. That's for sure.
However, we have an amazing show for you guys today. We have a hell of a panel. We've got Texas UFO researcher Jane Kyle, aka UFO Jane. She's documented over 1,000 UFO cases over the years and interviews UFO experts and others on her YouTube channel, The Weird UFO Show. We're also going to have Cristina Gomez with us today, host of Shifting the Paradigm, producer and presenter of Debriefed, Dig Deeper for the Debrief Media Company. She's a disclosure and UFO and UAP transparency advocate for the millennial and Gen Z generation. And last, but most certainly not least, welcoming our returning champion, Jazz Shaw, who is editor, reporter of Salem Media and The Debrief. He is also a Navy veteran, follower of the strange and unusual, and always under the constant threat of divorce. Welcome.
Thank you very much. By the way, Luis, just putting my vote in. Do not change the name of the show. I just today on the Twitter feed from one NBC News outlet that I correspond with saw them mentioning UCR. So don't change the name, man. You're locked in. I think it fits you. I think it fits the whole show. Just stick with the brand because I think
people can just say the acronym. If you don't like unidentified celebrity, you just UCO.
UCR.
UCR is part of the common vernacular now. So
I think it is.
It is UCR.
I've thought about this a lot, and it's something I went back and forth on a lot. But we've already done the branding. The name's not changing. I'm sticking with the name because I believe in it. There's an explanation behind it. If anybody's curious, they can always refer to this video. But yeah, I agree. I've worked too damn hard at this point to build the name of the channel, only to change it now. Everybody understands that the Big Phone Home is connected to this channel. We're starting to use hashtags that brand the channel. And guys, we're trying to build an audience. That's what we're doing. I'm not hiding anything here. This channel is 1,000,000% transparent. And I'm trying to be as honest with you guys as possible. So, thank you for the $5 donation, Elias. I truly appreciate it. Do we have another one in there?
He threw in two $5.
Oh, wow, dude. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Elias. We are trying. And all of those donations help. Yeah, they help to make sure that I'm no longer an Uber ever again for the rest of my life. I can do this show and do it comfortably and provide you guys with this fun entertainment, which I think it's fun. Anyway, so we're going to be waiting for Cristina Gomez. She should be popping in soon. So, Jazz, let's get into this article you wrote for the Debrief. This is one of my favorite cases ever. So where do you want to start with JAL Flight 1628?
Wow. I guess you start at the beginning. I mean, that's a sighting that had so much documentation around it. It got examined by government people, by ufologists. It's been out there since the 80s, and it's become lore. It's become legend. It was one of the most well documented and explored UFO encounters by not military, civilian pilots with Japan Airlines, and it created a lot of controversy on both sides. And not too long ago, I mean, right in the chat right now, you already said John Greenwald is in there.
Yeah.
I had followed this story and I'd seen bits and pieces, but the FAA had actually released an entire package at one point of all the FAA information about that sighting, the investigation that happened afterwards, and we can get into that in a second. But after 17 years, John actually got the entire package from the FAA, which they had previously claimed had been destroyed. and he
Right.
got the entire thing and released it. So I went and took a deep dive into it for a few days, and I wrote an article about it. And it's more complicated than you might think if all you did was watch, some of the undiscovered shows and things like that. Like, oh my God, this is the most amazing UFO sighting ever. There's a lot of amazing things about it. There's also, as it turns out, a lot of things that are, well, it causes you to ask some questions. It's like, how solid is this? So I came away from it. I will honestly say, I'm not going to say, it didn't happen or it wasn't a UFO event or UAP event, but there were a lot of questions that were raised that seemed to be very legitimate, and they were raised right from day one, and a lot of them got lost in the mix, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with. So the story, from what I understand, is we've got 3 pilots in a Japanese airline liner, and they're carrying cargo. Was it wine? I believe it was wine, if I'm not mistaken.
That was part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were. Can you remind me where they were going to and from? I know they were on their way to Japan, correct? And they had a stop in Alaska.
They were flying from France, and they had a midway stop in Anchorage, Alaska, for refueling and the usual things you do for going halfway around the planet in those days. And then they were going to go on to Tokyo. And as the plane was approaching Anchorage, the 3-person crew, and you're correct, there were no passengers. It was a cargo flight. Started to see what they saw, some really amazing things. And the pilot in particular engaged in this dialogue with the tower in Anchorage, with a local military base, eventually with a couple other planes that got diverted into the area. Like, I'm seeing these things, and we can get into the details, and obviously we will. But he was seeing things that caused him to actually request permission to divert his course, to change his altitude, to avoid a collision, because he was, seeing these bright lights, and he was giving descriptions of structure, things like that. And they were trying to avoid any sort of encounter. The initial encounter, the pilot described as being 2 bright lights that were in front of them, slightly off to the left, then moved over to the left side of the craft and was like lighting up the cockpit, and they felt heat on their faces, and then they disappeared. But another thing showed up that was gigantic, that was behind them, and was tracking them as they were heading towards Anchorage, and finally disappeared. And that's pretty much the story you hear in all the accounts that are shown on documentaries and things. And there were no casualties. They landed without incident in Anchorage. They eventually went on to Tokyo. But the events of the encounter sounded really alarming.
Yeah. Jane, you were going to say something?
Oh, no. I was just listening.
Oh.
I read
Okay.
your article, Jazz. It was really, really good.
Thank you.
And there were things I didn't know about the case. Well, I mean, and John, for providing so much material for it. Most notably that the radar evidence wasn't as conclusive as it seemed. In these programs, one was a possible error and one was very fleeting. So that was interesting to me. I will say there were a few other nuggets. I sent you a link, Louise, but there is a clip of the FAA division chief that characterized the investigation a little bit differently than that, though, and didn't imply a cover up, but just outright said it was covered up.
John,
from the top.
That was John Callahan. I was going to say that's the first person I think of when I think of the radar from this, because he's got the papers in his hand and he's like, I've got the radar, and he was like, this was an event that was covered up, and we do have that clip and we could cut to it. I heard somebody pop in here. I was waiting to see if it was Cristina. So I do have that clip, and I've got it popped up. Do you guys want to watch that clip real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Let me.
Data is always good.
Yeah, no. Listening to John Callahan talk about this, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us, which is a bummer because it would be
Oh.
really cool to talk to him. Sorry, hold on a second. I'm just sharing my screen here. Do this. Boom. Make sure the audio is shared. Q. There we go. So you guys see that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. Here we go.
He set up a meeting for me to give a dog and pony show to President Reagan's scientific staff and whoever they brought over. He says, well, this is the first time that we have recorded radar data on a UFO, and these guys are going to get all excited, drooling over all this data. I said, well, you're going to tell the public about it? And he says, no, we don't tell the public about this. It would panic the public.
I mean, what do you guys think about that? But that clip is, by the way, provided by UFO Jane in her channel, which is really cool. But I mean,
Thanks
yeah.
for the like, Louise. I appreciate that.
No sweat, darling. So I mean, so yeah, that's what I remember is Callahan coming up and being like, I've got the radar tracking. And so Jazz, you're saying though, in this article that, and with John Greenwald's help, that the radar wasn't as impressive as it sounded. Can you explain a little bit about
There
in
were
what ways?
there were a total of 5 different radars involved.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was the onboard weather radar on the Japan Airlines flight, which we have no records of, just the cockpit traffic about. We saw something on that. The 4 major radars, one of them was at Anchorage, one of them was at Fairbanks, another one was at the local Mac field, the military field, and none of them seemed to be conclusive. 2 of them never picked up anything besides the Japan Air flight. One of them, the Mac field, had a return, but they were immediate. And we've done shows here before where I talked about radar because I was a radar technician. They said they had some scatter near the Japan Air flight, but they immediately, if you go look at the transcript, and they have the record of the actual tower chatter, they were like, that doesn't look very substantial. That could just be, scatter, really. And then the tower they were talking to did briefly have a radar return, and they said, oh yeah, there's something else that's not scatter that's right near Japan Air, but then they lost it and it was gone.
How long did they have it, Jazz? How long did they have it?
If you go look at the transcript, they had it for the first 5-6 minutes, which is not insubstantial.
Yeah.
But we're talking a 40-minute period of time, and it never showed up again.
Wasn't at one point the captain of the plane had described that the massive object, as they were traveling, at cruising speed, was doing circles around it. Is that description correct?
That description does not hold up in the transcript of the chatter, and that's where another one of the big questions comes in. The pilot is the one who saw and reported most of the actual, here's what I see, here's what's going on, I need permission to move. He initially reported there were 2 lights that were out almost nearly in front of his plane, a little bit to the left. And then they moved over parallel, kind of to his left off the plane, 2 objects, brightly lit. The 2 other crew members, the co-pilot was on the right-hand side of the cockpit. And if you read the transcript of his interview, it was like, I did see some lights, but out in front, they just looked like lights. And when it went off to the left, I'm on the right-hand side of the cockpit. I can't see anything. The third officer is in the back, and he had very little to add in terms of, he never said, I saw any structure or anything. He saw some lights that he said that didn't look like town lights, like city lights ahead of you, but didn't have nearly as much of a description as the pilot. So that's what caught my attention. But the radar thing in particular, all the radar that was, being taken, none of it matched up exactly with what the pilot was saying, because the mech base, the military said, oh, we've got something. It's about 6 miles behind you on your tail. Is that it? And the captain was like, the pilot was like, no, it's in front of us. And so the only target they found initially was totally contradicted. So right off the bat, I mean, there were a lot of contradictions between what the pilot was reporting and what all the other data that we have seemed to indicate. Doesn't mean that he was wrong, but it doesn't make as solid of a case, in my opinion.
So are you saying that he reported as seeing a UFO in one part of the sky and radar saw the UFO in another part of the sky?
One of the radars
in the most simplest terms. Isn't that weird, I guess, all on itself? Like, let's say the pilot's just mistaking stars or town lights, for UFOs, reports it, and then, or it's just mistaking them. Should we get any anomalous radar evidence whatsoever? Is that, kind of common to get weird blips and things like, I don't know.
Weird blips on radar are totally common.
Okay, yeah.
But the point that I was making in the article was that the pilot was very clearly saying, I see two lights ahead of me at about 355, which is a little bit to the left of directly ahead of your nose. And when the first radar that actually got a contact said, oh, we've got a contact near you, it's about 6 miles directly at your 6, which means at your 6 o'clock, which means directly behind you. And the immediate response from the pilot was, no, negative. That's not it. It's up in front of us. So whatever they may have been seeing on radar that they were tracking many miles behind the jet, the pilot was insistent. No, this is something that's right in front of us. So I sort of wrote that part off. There could very well have been a plane.
Could have been multiple objects with
could have been something else.
Yeah. Could have been something else behind them, but he was worried about the thing in front of him. So,
right, because it sounds like he was adamant that there was something in front of him. But wouldn't this point to one of the 5 observables, which is low observability on sensor data equipment?
Are you asking me?
Anybody? Yeah, I mean, I'm asking you. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously we want radar data, right? We'd love to have radar data on these UFOs, but a lot of times we don't get it and we want it. And that's one of the things Elizondo points out in the 5 observables is that the observability is low on sensory systems. So is this something that, because it sounds to me like the captain was adamant that he saw something in front of him, and then they were trying to say, oh, we've got something behind you. And he's like, no, I've got something in front of me. You guys are not picking it up.
Right. And I think I addressed that in the article. If you get down towards the bottom where I start talking about the radar data.
Yep.
Certainly one of the 5 observables, blah, 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 is that they can hide from radar. But as I said, and I thought that was a key point, there were 5 different radar systems involved.
Right.
If this was something that was good at avoiding and avoiding detection by radar, wouldn't it have avoided all the radar and not just 2 of the 5?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Maybe it was. I mean, maybe it was jamming the radar.
Could be multiple objects, is what I would suggest, and maybe some
still possible.
Did not know the ones that were being detected and observed by the pilot. They were cloaked, perhaps. Just going along with these being advanced aliens, perhaps. Like, what could they do? How might they trip up the radar? And I had another thought, but I'll think about it in a second.
Well, let me ask you.
I come back to the co-pilot and
and
the third officer.
Yeah.
Under in I'm not going to say interrogation. They were just asked to provide testimony.
Right.
And one of the testimony transcripts is kind of bad because the person was trying to speak English even though they had a translator, and the questions were being asked in English, and the person was trying to answer in English when clearly English was like their fifth or sixth language.
Right.
That one wasn't good. The third one was the person spoke and said, "Can I speak in Japanese?" And they had a Japanese translator and gave a very concise, report. But
Which
those
pilot
two,
was that? Do you know?
What was his name?
Which one of the three was it? The co-pilot,
no, there was the pilot, there was
backseat?
the co-pilot, and there was the the flight engineer.
Flight engineer. There you go.
Yoshi Tsukuba. And Yoshi Tsukuba gave his interview in Japanese with a translator, and it came out just, perfect. So that was great. And he came through and said basically the same thing that it sounded like the co-pilot was trying to say. And the captain had described structure of the craft that he saw. And the other two were like, the most we ever saw was lights. We never saw anything like that.
Wow.
And they...
So that big walnut-shaped thing,
right.
the
Nobody
size
saw that but the
of
pilot.
4
And
aircraft
what if
carriers.
some men in black suits, maybe had a little talking to some of these witnesses. So I'm wondering why such inconclusive radar evidence would ever end up on President Reagan's desk. Like, why would it get to that level? Was it just the hype of the pilot himself and they just believed him? Like, why do you think it made it so far, Jazz? Then
No
That's
idea.
a great question.
That is a great question. I mean, why would it make it so far?
Right.
But nobody knew about this at the time except the people in the government, right? So we're only finding out about a lot of this after the fact.
Hey, Jazz.
Yes, sir.
Gilrick asked, were all 5 radars the same type?
No, they were not.
And do you, as
3 of them were.
As a radar expert, what would you say is the if they are different types of radar systems, they would obviously have different capabilities. Do you think that this could have had something to do with the difference in the data collection?
Certainly possible. I mean, we're going back a long ways, but
Right.
Fairbanks, Anchorage had the same radar system. There were 2. There was the onboard weather radar on the Japan Airlines jet, and an onboard radar for a United Airlines flight that came out later. They had the same radar system. And then there was the MAC system, the military one, that got the brief sort of scatter and then didn't see anything. That was probably the highest quality radar of the set of the 5. But there was 2 and 2 and 1. So there was 3 different types of radar systems. So
Got it.
Okay, well, let's because someone fun just popped in the room, so let's reset the room. And also, we've got a $10 donation from Mick West the Sphincter, and he says, "What's crack-a-lackin'?" Well, I don't know. I don't know what's crack-a-lackin'. Yeah, it's a funny comment, and I like your name. It's hilarious. I think UFO Jane might be having some connection issues, so let's take her out for a second. And see if she pops back in. And yeah, Michael, you want to reset the room?
I would love to. So for those of you who don't know, we've got Jazz Shaw here. He's the editor-reporter for Salem Media and The Debrief. He just recently wrote an article on the recently FOIA documents that were extracted. So we're going over that flight information today. So thank you for that, Jazz. We appreciate your hard work writing that article based on all of that data. And we've also got Cristina Gomez joining us right now, host of Shifting the Paradigm, producer and presenter of
get out of here.
Dig Deeper for the Debrief Media Company. She's a disclosure and UAP UFO transparency advocate for the millennial and Gen Z audience. Cristina Gomez, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you for having me so late. I just finished Mysteries with the Histories. And then the UPS guy came in, and now I'm able to set up my new mic.
Ooh, yeah,
was-
she's got a new mic, and you
I
sound
like-
great.
I like the shift
now.
from
Let Cristina
stage
take my
to the
spot.
library.
Spaces.
Well, see, before, so like it's so hot in my apartment, I have to keep the AC on. But during all
Yeah.
of my lives, I turn it off, so I start like sweating, like I've just gone jogging in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And but now I can have it playing. I mean, like working, and I don't have to worry about being
That's
sweaty.
fantastic.
Ooh, man, I
Gotta
need to
love
get me one of those
dynamic-
mics.
Gotta love those dynamic microphones. Somebody
Yeah.
earlier, when you were not here yet, Cristina, somebody in the chat, and I can't remember who it was, they were like, I can guarantee you Cristina is not here right now because she's plugging in a brand new microphone. So I don't know. I don't know if you got cameras in your house or if like
Yep.
you're broadcasting this live, but somebody knows what the F is going on in your house. So just be aware.
I love it. Real quick, just to remind everybody, again, links in the description below for everyone who's here on the show. Also, Patreon, so definitely check that out. If you haven't liked, subscribed, or shared the channel, that's a great way to support the channel without having to spend any money. It helps us reach more people. I see 125 of you guys in here. We love you all very much. Thank you for the support. So, real quick, also, we got John Greenwald, not only in the chat, but he's coming on Friday. So be here on Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then Erica Luke's next Wednesday. We're talking about Japanese Airline Flight, Cristina, and so what about the cockpit recording? I remember the one line that sticks out of my head is the pilot going, that's quite a big, like he was like, the recording I thought was. He's kind of Italian. It sounded like he was pretty concerned while on, communicating with the tower in Alaska. What can you speak to in regards to that? Did he hear me?
Are you asking me?
No, I was asking Jazz.
Oh, I thought you were asking Cristina.
Oh, no. I was asking Jazz, and then Cristina could have follow-up questions. But no, I was asking you because you wrote the article.
Oh, can you repeat the question?
That would
I'm
make
sorry.
sense.
No, that's okay. The cockpit recording. How does that reconcile into the case? Like it seems like a very compelling cockpit recording.
As I wrote in the article for the debrief, I found of all the testimony that John Greenwald dredged up, the cockpit transcript was the most compelling portion of it. It's one of the longest. It's got time marks. It has ID for every individual that's speaking, including the Japan Airlines pilot, two operators at the radar tower, one from the MOC for the military, the pilot of a United Airlines, the plane that was dispatched to send over to go, hey, do you see this giant thing following them? And the pilot of a military flight that was also dispatched. It's like, hey, we're trying to find this Jupiter-sized thing following these guys. Nobody saw anything. Nobody except the actual pilot.
And
of
is
the
this
Japan Airlines
why?
flight saw it.
And I know that the particular pilot in question here who had the best sighting, he's also had multiple previous sightings in the past.
Right.
Did that come up at all in the? I know you wrote about it in the article, Jazz, but did they question him about that? Did they know that at the time when they were questioning him?
Well, Class, who was one of the big debunkers at the time, you can think of him as like the Mick West of the 80s, wrote about this and pointed out that, this guy had two previous officially recorded sightings where he said he had seen unidentified aerial phenomena, as we'd call it today, UFOs. But also he was really a big believer, and I'm not going to dispute that. In his personal notes, that's one other document that John Greenwald published, was the pilot's personal notes that were later published in support, in addition to the interview that he did. And he didn't just talk about, I saw some lights, I saw a craft. He talked about, I saw alien spacecraft, I saw a mothership. I mean, he was using all the language. Now, does that mean the guy's not telling the truth? Obviously not. but he was speaking the language of someone who was already predisposed to believe all of this. If you're predisposed, doesn't mean you didn't see a UFO. You may very well have seen a UFO, but particularly in that period, so far ahead of disclosure, that immediately made people suspicious, and they were like, when you're talking about motherships and stuff, I mean, aren't you a professional pilot?
This is before Phoenix Lights,
right?
So
that was
it is
before
like
then, yeah.
Pre UFO, pre UFO Twitter. So yeah, he
right.
Yeah, one of the early ufologists.
No, I agree with Jane. I mean, he was probably very unfairly judged by people saying, well, this is a guy that already believes in aliens, dude. He believes in little green men. He sees stuff. And I think that was held against him, and probably unfairly, because in the modern era, how many experiencers are there that we've heard from that have multiple experiences? So that's totally fine. But we still have to circle back and go, well, okay, for your particular sighting, where we have all this radar data and other planes in the area and the towers, what can you show us to back up your report? If the two people who were in the cockpit with you don't really give an aligning account. So that's where I get these questions,
Yeah. That's where my concern. My concern has nothing to do with whether or not he had seen something previously, or whether or not his vernacular was associated with science fiction. My concern is that the corroborating story from the other pilots wasn't there. That's concerning.
Did it conflict, or was it just that they, it's like, I'm not a very detail-oriented person, right? So like my husband will notice everything in a room, and I'll be like, I didn't know. So was it just that it was like a vague experience for them, just some weird lights, whereas maybe this trained UFO observer who maybe just knew to pay attention right away, or also, I know we have a lot of big UFO Twitter conversations about perspective and UFOs being a personal experience, and maybe they look different to one person than they do to somebody else. So right. I know I'm throwing out.
I think Jane brings up a great point, by the way, particularly given the time period we're talking about. The pilot was willing to say, I saw two things with bright lights that had nozzles on them, and then I saw something look like a mothership behind me. The other two people in the cockpit were considerably younger. They had their whole career in front of them.
That's an interesting point. That's a really interesting point.
When they were interviewed, did they just say, well, I saw some lights, it could have been something. See, that's the other part of me that I'm not entirely sold on. Those two people had a long career in front of them. And if they came out and said, oh my God, yeah, it was totally a UFO, they could have been unemployed tomorrow. So were they more hesitant, and they gave their report and said, yeah, I saw some lights, but they weren't willing to come forward and say that? I think Jane brings up a good point.
That's a great point.
They might have been far more reluctant to talk to the FAA and everyone involved and say, oh, dude, it was aliens, because it's like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to work at a bagel shop, so that could be part of it. We don't know, really.
Well, here's the part that really sort of like I have a hard time sort of coming to terms with, and that is, imagine being in that cockpit with those three guys, and you've got one guy talking about what he's seeing to the radar. It's been recorded, and all of these other things are happening around them at the same time. And either I'm trying to figure out what's going on through the minds of the co-pilot, who's also looking out the same window, who I think, I think he can see out most the left side as well. I'm pretty sure, they can see, both of them can see around. What's going through his brain? Is he looking at this pilot going, what are you talking about? I don't see what you're seeing, especially when a huge walnut-sized craft starts, going in and out and in front of them, and it's supposed to be 4 times the size of their plane. I just don't understand. Like, I'm curious to know what was the cockpit atmosphere on the way from Alaska to Japan. Like, they must have been like, okay, what's going on? You know, like, why are you? What's the deal? Like, why did you do that? Like, we didn't see any of that stuff. And I also answer me if you can, anyone. But Jazz, when the pilots got back to Japan, they also had to debrief the airline, right?
Right. We don't have that.
We don't have that. But from what my understanding was, especially in Japanese cultures, it's like they take their craft incredibly seriously. There's a lot of honor in everything that they do. And from my understanding is this pilot was grounded because of this. He basically got a desk job. So this didn't win him any favors. It definitely didn't bring him any friends in the country that he lives in. So that's where I'm sort of conflicted with this, because like, why would this guy say all of these wild things and two other people in the exact same situation, they're not really confirming it.
Who had their entire careers ahead of them.
Were they able to keep their jobs?
See, that I don't know. I don't know about the other two pilots, if they also were grounded. And maybe that's part of the reason why their stories conflict, because they knew as soon as they got home, if they told the exact same story that the pilot, the captain had said, they would have been grounded as well.
Sign some NDA to.
Yeah.
So then, do you think it was a good move or a cowardly move to do?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Cristina.
Well, of course, this is just speculation. And later, Jason McClellan, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. That's a great question. I mean, I would figure in that culture, especially, it would have been very shameful. Very, very shameful to not back up your captain.
But don't you think it would also be very, very shameful to
lie?
To speak about UFOs? Don't you think that brings shame to your family going home to Japan after this?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Your job and
right.
You've been given some kind of Roswell style briefing, and they're like, "This is national security, and this is above your head." And that wouldn't mean it was a real sighting. Then I don't necessarily think it would be cowardly, and I feel that way about all the witnesses, over these 70 maybe plus years, right, of secrecy. So, I mean, if they were given some kind of intimidating, threatening talk and told this was a national security issue and they needed to stay out of it, I don't think that. If they just did the math in their own head and they just didn't back up their pilot just because they wanted to keep their job, I definitely think that's cowardly. I mean, I think all of us have put, ourselves out there getting into ufology, some of us maybe before some recent disclosures, and maybe feel a little bit weird about some of our day jobs, right? So
then again, Japan's really expensive, I wouldn't want to lose my job in that country.
Well, I was also just going to mention that there's also a difference, like here in the United States. I mean, it's always been fringe, and you've always been kind of giggled at or laughed at or pointed at, but generally you're probably not going to lose your job if you tell a coworker you saw.
Well, if you're not a pilot,
you're not
anyway.
Well, true. That's
well,
fair.
Back then it was a long time ago, and we are talking about Japan, which has a very
1986, right?
That was what I was going to get to. That was my ultimate point. That's exactly right, Jazz. In Japan, if you say something and you lose your job and you have to go back to your family and hang your head low because you reported a UFO, that's a very different thing. And so maybe you would consider it cowardly, but is it cowardly to, speak up and then lose your job and not be able to pay for your children to eat?
Right.
Well, I mean, from what I know about the Japanese culture, that they're more open-minded to this topic, and they have been since the 1950s. I think there would be kind of like a novelty status to it. I mean, Japanese film crews are usually first on the scene of any UFO or crop circle mysteries in Europe and other places, and they have been like that for decades.
But then why did he get grounded?
That's question.
You know, like if they're so open-minded about it, why do you get grounded?
And
Even
why
even
was
in
it
It depends
1986.
on the airline that
Trying
they're
to-
on. Maybe there are certain rules on that specific airline. Maybe not the culture in general.
Yeah.
Right. And you
Again,
mentioned,
I mean, I'm the one who wrote the article. We
Yeah.
don't have any of that data.
Right.
We only know what happened afterwards in the aftermath, and
You know, we're only speculating on this part of it.
we're
Yeah, of
speculating
course.
on
Yeah.
a lot of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's still a good argument to be made, and you guys have made some of these arguments, that the people that were involved, particularly the two other crew members, they would have had a motivation potentially to be like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about this,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what about the people at Mac in Alaska, and what about the people at Anchorage? What would be their motivation to lie? I think that's where I start to go, well, if you saw something on the other radars, why would you lie and say you didn't see something? I mean, and they, let's not forget, they dispatched two other aircraft. One of them was a United Air flight, and one of them was a military flight. And they were both sent over at the same time before the pilot said that the giant Jupiter-sized thing, was no longer chasing him.
Yeah.
And two other flights went there, and the pilots radioed back and said, "Yeah, we see the Japan Airlines. We don't see anything else."
Interesting.
And so, what would be their motive to lie?
Right. No, that makes sense. I just now it's gone from one of my favorite stories to shit.
Well, I guess the question is, I mean, are people really rational? Like, do you think we're actually rational creatures, or are we sporadic in our
Well,
decisions?
speak for yourself. I'm not rational.
This is true. Yeah, no, it's a good question, Cristina. Like, I just can't imagine. Like, what if he is lying? I mean, are we saying this Japanese captain is lying, or are we saying he's just sorely mistaken? No, I'm just asking the question. I'm not saying anybody said that. I'm saying, like, it's got to be one or the other, though, right? It's either he's insanely mistaken and he genuinely thought he saw something and had a moment of just pure madness because the other two pilots aren't backing him up. It's the versus the other side of this.
Well,
It's hard to
I don't
say.
know. Isn't it still possible that he saw bright lights, things that were strange that he didn't expect to see as an experienced pilot, but interpreted that as something different than what the other crew members would have interpreted, and they would think, well, that could be stars, planets, celestial bodies, bringing McWest seagulls, whatever. And he was like, and his first thought was, "Oh, it's another UFO because I've seen UFOs before."
oh
Sticking in my
boy,
mind.
here comes
Yeah.
the hat.
Here we
Yeah.
go. Okay,
Yeah.
Jane.
Okay, so let's say he's into UFOs because the aliens are following this pilot, okay? And they're trying to abduct this pilot. There's other missing pilots cases that are pretty phenomenal too, well documented UFO sightings. That was the goal. This pilot knew what he was looking for. It was a personal experience. Maybe there were multiple objects. So you get a little radar evidence. You get the other pilots. Maybe they even saw something more. Because we're presuming these aliens are real. If the aliens are real, they definitely all got Men in Black visits. The transcript, though, if there's no missing time, it seems like the the transcript would be pretty reliable. You need the full recording of the whole thing, right? So, I mean, that would just be, and then that's how it gets to President Reagan, and then you have a Japanese citizen seeing a UFO in the U.S. Japan wants to be disclosure. U.S. wants to be disclosure. So this is now super national security because you don't want anything leaking to the Japan government. So that would be, okay, well, I'll take it off now.
I love it. That was awesome.
No, that was so great. So much enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That's just it. But Yeah.
Real quick,
I like what it did for your mic, by the way, because you could actually
Yeah.
hear the resonance from the mic in the tinfoil hat.
Oh, shoot.
That was awesome.
That was cool. That was cool. Real quick, just want to say thank you for the $10 donation from Case for Infinity. Thanks for the chat. So says he or she. Thank you so much for the $10 donation. Truly appreciate it. And G West says with a $10 donation, says Sam Harris stated government officials reached out to him on present UFO disclosure. Is anyone trying to follow up with him for more information on this? Sounds like it's a huge opportunity to get info.
Get him on UCR.
I mean, we'd love to have Sam Harris on UCR. I'm not sure.
Let's get him on the show. I mean, definitely.
Yeah. No, that would be great. I mean, look, he says he's meeting with ex-officials. He's not meeting with government officials. So there's a difference there. But I did find it interesting that they wanted to talk to him about the messaging of this topic. And because I guess he has a big audience, he's got a big pull, he's got some influence. Maybe they want to use him to help shape sort of the discussion and give people some solid facts to rely on.
I always find it
how do you think that conversation go? What kind of facts do you think would be suggested in there? And by the way, thank you for another $5 donation. We'll read this in a second. If it is a question, it doesn't look like a question. I don't see a question mark, but I'll just read it. Maybe they all saw something slightly different because they were looking through a gravitational distortion and don't want to contradict each other.
Wow, it's so long ago.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to make a quick statement about Sam Harris and this idea that he's got ex-CIA officials.
While Michael does that, before we switch over to the Skinwalker, can you put me backstage for a second? I got to do one thing.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just jazz. But so I just wanted to say real quick, the CIA officials reaching out to Sam Harris. I always find it interesting when these ex-officials reach out, because this means that these are people who were in the know, who still have governmental clearance, but are not as restricted as they were when they were in government. So the fact that they're reaching out now means they're deeply concerned about this issue. Because if they're retired and they don't care about this issue, they're not reaching out to Sam Harris. So there's got to be a there. There's got to be something important here that they would be willing to reach out even after serving in the government on this issue. So I always find that really interesting.
Would you think it's like planned in a sense of soft disclosure, or do you think it's with their own will, such as Sam Harris?
I think it's both. I think it's them wanting to be helping to inform the narrative for soft disclosure. Mm-hmm. And they think Sam Harris is somebody who can help do that, because I think they're probably fans of Sam Harris. They know his style. He's got an incredible ability to take very complex issues and break them down and make them he can disseminate those to a lot of people. So I think it's probably people in the CIA who have a lot of faith that he would be a great person to break a very complex subject down and make it simple for people to grasp.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't he do a podcast with Ricky Gervais?
No, he has Ricky Gervais on his show a lot, and Ricky Gervais has him on his show a lot.
Got it. Okay. The way I saw the podcast, it seemed like they did the show together.
They did. Well, that particular show.
How am I not listeling to this? Because I love Ricky Gervais.
Well, they're big fans of each other because they're both atheists, actually. Right. And they've been buddies for a long time.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say the atheist thing. So Sam Harris thinking if he's being targeted to help disclose all of this. So, he's influential, obviously, but like super influential into people's like way of life, right? And like self-improvement. And we know the religious questions going to come up when aliens come up. So you probably want to find people who are the atheist influencers and the Christian influencers and the Buddhist influencers and get them to help calm us all down.
Right. Well, it's interesting. The Catholic Church came out and said, and this was probably 10 years ago now, they said, if we do end up finding life on other planets, it's okay. The scriptures are still real. Don't worry about it. Like they tried to get ahead of this thing years ago.
Years ago. Well, I think they also said that if anything, it explains the existence of God even more.
Yeah, I mean,
he's abundant, or God is abundant. Whatever you think it is.
But the real problem comes in when it comes back to Jesus being a human and the only Son of God. People are going, well, if there's other creatures out there on different planets, what does that mean for Jesus? And they're like, no, Jesus is still all good. It's all good.
It's all good. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I do want to just touch on this real quick because I didn't feel like we answered it, and it was a $5 dono. So I mean, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit. Jane, you were kind of suggesting this in a way where you're just like, well, maybe all of these guys are seeing something different because we have Michael. Listen, if you gotta, I'll just do this.
Yeah, sorry, I should have told you that earlier when I was getting my snoring dog out of
No, it's all good. It's all good. I didn't even hear the snoring dog. So, no, but you were kind of alluding to this a little bit where maybe they're seeing something differently because all the angles are different. All of the points of view are different, even if it's only a foot. It could be a huge difference in how you perceive this. So it's a good question. It's just, it's a tough one to apply to this one. It's like, it's hard to swallow because it's too convenient of an answer, if that makes sense. Like it's I don't want to call it a cop-out answer, but it does feel a little bit like, it's too easy to just put that on the table and say, well, there's your explanation. But I mean, yeah, how do you feel, Jane?
Yeah, no, I agree. I when I read Jazz's article, it was a bit of a bummer because I did really like the piece, and I like drawing, that he did or commissioned or whatever, and the diagram and everything. I still think it's really weird it ended up with Reagan, and maybe it is just as simple as this was a Japanese citizen seeing a UFO in U.S. airspace. We just have to make sure that we nip this in the bud and get a good handle on this because maybe they couldn't fully rule it out, and so maybe it is a more kind of boring story like that. But I don't know. I know John left the chat, but
yeah,
keep thinking.
Cristina, what do you think as far as perception of the encounter from different angles?
It's good.
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. That's the analysis everybody was dying for. It's good. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, look.
I do apologize. I was a little bit confused talking about religion and talking about the Japanese.
I was a little bit
confused.
No, that's okay. Now that makes sense. I know. I just wanted to touch on that question because I felt bad. I feel like we didn't answer it well enough, but it's good. So there you go. There's your answer, Schoolcraft. I mean, if that's not the best analysis that you're ever going to hear about Japanese Airline Flight 1642, is it?
It's good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So there you go. Okay, so
I don't want to leave, if I can be allowed. I don't want to leave this segment and get into the Skinwalker thing without pointing out that nowhere in the article did I say this was definitely debunked. I never said that.
No.
Okay.
No, but it did bum me out. I'm with Jane. It did kind of bum me out a little bit because I think, unlike you, Jazz, I didn't go to the John Greenwald's Black Vault and really dive into the trail about this story.
It was 270 pages. I went through to drag all that out.
That's a lot. That's a lot of information. And the only thing I've seen is are the cockpit recordings, and then you hear John Callahan, and then you hear the pilot testimonies, and of course they're in broken English. You hear the story and the account and how many radar systems pick it up. Then you hear Michio Kaku going, "This is probably the best case ever." You hear about this thing getting all the way up to President Reagan's desk, which is very fascinating. It's just all of these things. And then you wrote it, and I was like, oh, no, not Japanese Airline Flight, no, anything but that one. It was just, but, I think, would you say it's fair to say there's really good arguments for both sides of this case? Like, it's a very mysterious case, and neither side, I think, answers what really happened that day very well. Fair?
I would agree that describes a lot of our most famous incidents. I certainly think it applies to this one. As far as the testimony stuff goes, you guys, particularly Jane, have brought up good points about, like, well, one of the big shoot downs is, well, why didn't your two, fellow crew members, why didn't they back you up? Well, maybe they didn't want to lose their jobs,
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I think the radar questions that were brought up were very valid. It's like, well, why did one of them have it and one of them had some scramble, two of them had nothing, one of them had something for like 20 seconds, and we're always looking. Isn't this the discussion we have about all the current things going on, with the UAP task force, the military encounters? What are the ones we want the most? We want the ones with the data, right? We want the ones that have the radar data and the satellite data and all this stuff. And we don't have a lot of that from the Japan Airlines event, but the data we do have is contradictory. It's not eliminating it, but it is contradictory, and it raises questions. And that was all I was trying to say in the article.
Yeah, and you did a great job of that.
It's not, I think, as 100% of a lock as a lot of us, including me, thought it to be watching some of the TV coverage over the years. That's all I was trying to say.
Well, and Jazz, I'm sorry, Mike, that's so valuable, because sometimes I think my favorite moments in life are when I take in new information and it changes my point of view or perspective on something that I thought I knew was fact. And so that's what this article did. It straightened me out on what the facts were. And so now I gotta start going, I gotta step back and go, okay, maybe this isn't the diamond in the rough we thought it was. There are aspects to it where maybe it sort of tinges or feels a little bit like a diamond in the rough, but then everything else kind of falls apart. The nicest way I could put it. Michael, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I completely agree with you. And what I just wanted to appreciate Jazz, because there's so much. I mean, none of us have time to go through the documentation that he has, and the fact that you were able to get through it and really bring out the most important aspects of this and report on it in a very fair and balanced way. I mean, at the end of the day, we say every single day, every single week, all that matters is the facts, and we need the facts to make a better decision and an analysis. And for God's sakes, we've got to put our bias on the shelf when it comes to this topic, because we need the facts. Yeah. So thank you, Jazz.
Yeah,
absolutely, Mike.
It's good work. It's good work, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. And also thank the Debrief for letting you report on such an old case. Like, this is something that I think people in their minds had thought was solved, and you come and you're like, not solved. Actually, it's there's some holes in it. So it's fun, So I'm glad that they allowed you the runway space to write that article. That was really cool of them. Okay, so let's reset the room. Let's get into our Skinwalker Ranch review and our surprise guest. Not really, because I kind of announced it on Twitter, but this is gonna be either the greatest moment in this show, or this is gonna be an absolute dumpster fire. Either way, it's gonna be entertaining. It's gonna be really entertaining. So Michael, my suggestion is share the hell out of this channel starting right now, because things are about to get very interesting. Michael, let's reset it.
I'm so excited. So again, for those of you just joining us, make sure, if you don't know Jane Kyle, she is UFO Jane. She's documented over 1,000 UFO cases over the years and interviews UFO experts and others for the YouTube show, The Weird UFO Show. We've got Cristina Gomez, host of Shifting the Paradigm, producer and presenter of Debriefed, Dig Deeper for the Debrief Media Company. She's a disclosure and UAP transparency advocate for the Millennial and Gen Z generation. You all know, you all love the one and only Jazz Shaw, who is the editor-reporter of Salem Media, the Debrief. He's also a U.S. Navy veteran, follower of the Strange Unusual, and always under the constant threat of divorce. Speaking of divorce, welcome welcome to the one and only George Shaw. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yay.
You're
Welcome to the
already
show.
in trouble. Because her name is not George Shaw.
Not Shaw.
Oh,
Not Shaw.
we already messed up.
Oh no.
We already
Already
messed up.
Where's my producer? Where's my producer? God bless America.
Okay, so you correct us. What is your name, my lady?
Just refer to me as the George. That's easy.
As the
George.
George.
I
Okay.
love it.
All right, it's mysterious. I
I
love
also
it.
feel like she's got like this filter over the
That's
top,
so
so it's like it's kind of a blurry. She's got the blurry thing going on, so we
Yeah.
can't like fully make her out. So
Oh, there we go. There we go.
just spit on it. Just spit on
Yeah.
it.
Boom. It worked. It worked.
It worked?
It worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
You look
everybody
great.
watching, this is the love of my life. This is the woman who saved my life more than a quarter century ago. And we've been together ever since. And this is the person I live for.
Oh man, this
Oh,
is so
there's no
sweet.
E on the end of George, just so Mascota knows.
Okay, well we're excited to have you here for the Skinwalker review. What were you gonna say, Michael?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
To the George? Has Jazz ever actually been on the verge of divorce?
No.
No.
Jazz!
You lie to us.
You
Okay,
lie.
he might have been on the verge of sleeping on the couch, but probably not actually.
The couch is very comfortable. I make it a rule if you're buying a couch, get a comfortable one that you
Amen.
don't mind sleeping on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, dear.
Fair.
Snoring a
Good
lot,
rule.
I'll go sleep on the
Secret to a
couch.
good marriage.
Yeah, that's a secret to a good man. Yes, indeed, Jane. See, we're already getting knowledge from the George. I love it. Okay, so we've heard that you're a big fan of the Skinwalker show.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us so far, because we had a break last week. You take notes. We all take notes. I love that. Reminds me, I got to get my notes here. So what have you thought so far up until this episode, and then give us your thoughts there, and then we'll get into the season episode 5.
Oh gosh. I don't have a speech prepared for this, so
That's okay. It's your thoughts. You don't have to have a speech. What do you think of the show?
Yeah,
I'm
what does your gut
enjoying
say?
it.
Yeah.
It is clearly nonsense. There
We're
really isn't.
never getting Dragon back on.
Well, Dragon's sincere. I like
Yeah.
I
Dragon.
love Dragon.
Yeah.
Dragon is doing what his job is, and that's taking care of security and trying to make sure no one gets hurt, and that's sensible and good. And, but Travis, oh my Bob,
Oh my Bob, indeed.
what a delightful little drama queen. And I really think that the ranch affects Travis more because he's such a gullible twit. He's more open to go on, make something happen, I dare you, and then oh my gosh, something actually is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's really good at that.
How do you let me ask you this, the George, how do you because I feel the same way about Travis, but I'm trying to figure out like how do you go, okay, I'm an astrophysicist, I've been studying this stuff for 25 years, I'm looking into wormholes because of Einstein, blah 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 blah. How do you balance that? How do you balance
that moment
with-
where he did the turning of the bulletin board chalkboard and it's wormhole.
Did you see?
Oh my
did you
God!
see
It's
Dragon's
season
face?
1. Yeah.
see
That
Dragon's
one
face?
killed both. No, that was just this episode.
Yeah.
That was this episode.
That killed both of us. He was like, he's got the chalkboard. He's like, and I'm trying to figure out all of these broadband things, but could it be?
No, I brought that up when they
I was
did
like,
that
okay,
earlier in
I
this
need a
season.
drink.
They brought it back.
No,
And Dragon.
Oh, that's Daisy, our dog.
Overreacted.
Crazy. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
If I
Okay.
get a little too enthusiastic, he has to watch my face.
Oh.
That was a killer moment from season 1, and you're right. I'm happy they brought it back in season 2 because that is a very dramatic flip of the board. It was like,
Second time they did it this season.
yeah. Well, no, I think the second. Well, yeah, they brought it back to you showed that replay twice. Yeah, you're right. Dude. Okay, so let's get into this first episode.
George, make sure there isn't a tape over your camera right now, or just wipe it with something, because you're very blurry.
Yeah,
She
I
did.
know.
She already spit shined it,
I,
but
s- I really need to get an alcohol swab and have at it.
Well,
just
don't
have
set-
Jazz breathe on it.
Yeah, there
I'm
you
in a
go.
different room, dude. I'm probably going to be sleeping in this room at this rate, so I can't help. You know.
There's too much sugar in this to make it a truly a thing, because it's amaretto and scotch.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
nice.
There you go.
Mazel tov.
Nice. Okay. God, where did I start my notes? Okay.
But I think that made it clear. That worked a little bit.
All right. So
better.
we had a thermal expert Guy Blocker join the ranch. So he's gonna keep an eye on the thermal imaging, because they're redoing this experiment, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I think this is the first experiment they've repeated. Am I wrong on that?
When you say repeated, you mean the actual everything in the experiment was repeated?
Correct. Yeah, where
Okay.
they had the seance, and they had the rabbi. They had his recording, and they played the recording. They had the thermal camera there, and then they also added other instruments to help record this event if
Right.
anything happened. Which, by the way, they never told us what those instruments were. Like there was like
Which instruments?
Yeah, I've noticed that.
the instrument,
Exactly.
the big radar dish that Travis was wrenching down.
Oh
and,
yeah,
yeah, like
I
they.
was laughing my ass off.
Yeah, it was almost like an 80s montage, the way they set up this camp. It was really funny. But I'm bummed that they, again, going back to the science part of this, they didn't go over any of the instruments that they added to this experiment. They focused primarily on the thermal imaging. So
It's not just not listing what machines they did addition. They didn't list what they had to start.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Yes, that's a good point as well. That's also a really good point. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Can I ask you a question, Luis?
Fire away.
Do you think that, I mean, obviously, this show is for kind of, I mean, let's be real, it's for dumb America. But do you think, like, the producers of the show think about, like, people like us who are critical about it? Or do you think this is just pure entertainment from their perspective?
I wonder if they're.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if. Yeah, I almost want to pass this question too, but I wonder if creatively they're satisfied with the show they're making.
I think they might be.
I think that everybody will watch it. Like, will watch anyways. So
Yes.
as long as they can get,
And if it's for Dumb America, then I'm in on
We're
that,
going
because
places.
I love it. I love the show. And look, let's just start here. This was, I think, one of the most entertaining episodes of the season. Fair?
I
Jazz said no.
I like episode
Okay.
4
Okay.
better.
All right. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not get ahead. Okay.
I would like to let the ladies talk. So,
Yeah.
let the
I'll
ladies
shut up
talk.
as well.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about Stephen Wall, the member of the Sherman family, the nephew. He came on the ranch and he described a story about dogs pressed into the ground.
That was actually funny though, but like not funny, but interesting. Like he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, who saw that? You heard the story from your parents?" He's like, "No, I saw it when I was a kid." I was like, "Oh, huh, okay." Like that
Yeah.
actually
So
captivated me a
creepy.
little bit.
Yeah, that was a creepy story. Christina.
Yeah, and Travis Taylor's like, vaporized dogs, eh? Like he's just like all chill about it. He's like, no,
Travis.
they were crushed.
Thank you for not
And this is
reenacting
after
the
like
dogs.
they're like using the cows as bait,
Yeah.
you guys probably shouldn't watch.
I think in season 3, the George, he'll probably be reenacting the dogs.
As long as
How are there no
As long as
pictures
John
of-
Wick is not being brought on, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah,
John
fair.
Wick.
Yeah, true.
True.
How are there no pictures or videos of that?
I
Of
can
the dog?
understand how there's no video, but yeah, I figured somebody would have taken a picture.
Of the crushed dogs?
Yeah, 3 crushed dogs. Like, if I had come onto that, it was like, Jesus, it sounded like it was a steamroller, the way they
But I
described
guess so
it.
much shock. Like they
Only
didn't have
circular.
time to mentally think about taking
Right.
a picture. Or they didn't want it on their phone. I mean, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, circular. Good point. It wasn't like a steamroller so much. It was more like a stamp.
Like a
Yeah, well,
giant
I think of
trash can lid.
the end of Roger Rabbit when the judge gets steamrolled. You girls know what I'm talking about. That's kind of what I pictured in my brain. But yeah, I mean, if something that anomalous and that wild happened on the ranch, and the story obviously got out, you figure someone would have been like, "Hey, did you guys take a picture of that? Maybe we should take some
Like
pictures
you'd have
of
the
that."
sheriff come. Somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know. You'd think somebody would take a picture at some point.
Well,
The SPCA, maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
just imagine your dogs. You come out to your yard, and you have 3 dogs that have been crushed, and it looks
I
like
have
they
3 dogs.
Yeah, like who would you call? Who would be the first person you call?
Ghostbusters.
If they're showing
I wanted to
animal
say that so
mutilation,
bad,
the
Jess.
cows mutilated, they're going to
Yeah.
show pictures of the dogs mutilated. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, no, that's true, but I think they didn't show the picture because nobody thought to take the picture. Either they didn't think of it, or I'm assuming like if I came out and I saw 3 of my dogs that I raised crushed to the ground in 3 circles that looked kind of burnt from their descriptions, I think the first phone call I would have made would be the police. And you figure the police would have come out with a camera, because every single police officer, especially detectives, they always have a camera on them. Every single one of them.
So I
they would have
haven't
taken a
seen
picture.
the episode, and
Yeah.
so they didn't call the police.
We don't know.
Maybe
We
they
don't
did,
know.
and it was classified. Maybe the photos were.
Maybe it was edited out.
Yeah.
But this was 25 years ago. I mean,
Right.
20, 25 years ago. So we really don't know. I mean, it's possible that they could have taken a picture, but I doubt it. I was going to back up UFO Jane and because we think about, if you have dogs, a lot of people, their dogs are like their children. Like
Right.
if your child gets crushed, is the first thing you do take a picture of your crushed child? Probably not.
What I'm saying is that I think the first step you would make would be to call the police. And when the police
Right.
would come out, their job would be to document it and take a picture of it. And then a detective would be assigned to it. That's what I'm saying. And,
that's fair.
and I think that's a reasonable response. And if they didn't call the police, that's what I'm like, well, why wouldn't you call the police if you experienced something that... But here's the point. The episode didn't make it clear enough. Like, we don't know.
All right, so here's my second argument on that. So
All right.
to us today, as we have dogs in our houses, they're like our kids. But back when you have a farm dogs are like fucking... you can replace a farm dog. Like, that's not a big deal. So
Depends
you
on the dog.
might not call the police if you lost a few farm dogs.
I mean, 3 farm dogs? If they're farm dogs, that means they're helping you,
Jazz
wrangle
knows the answer to
cattle.
this question.
Yeah, Jazz.
When you had a farm, when you were a kid, if a couple of your farm dogs got crushed, are you calling the cops?
A couple
Yes,
of your
because
farm
that
dogs.
Never
dog is
had
just as
any of
expensive as
our-
a cow.
We never
What the-
had any of our dogs get crushed except for one of them that ran out in front of a snowplow, and we didn't really need the cops because it was kind of obvious because the snowplow driver knew my dad, and he was like, "Sorry, I crushed your dog,"
Sorry.
So no, I mean, you grow up on the farm. I'm sorry, there are bad things that happen to animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So no, I'm not. I think a lot of people who didn't grow up in a rural area, they hear a story like that and they're like, well, why wasn't the FBI informed immediately?
I didn't say that.
No, I'm exaggerating.
No, you're
The
right.
fact
though.
is that animals die on farms all the
all the
time.
time.
But let me ask
But
you this, Jazz.
Not like that. I mean, this sounds like a horror scene. That's where my mind goes. How do you not how does this not escalate? And there's some kind of evidence of it 'cause it's an extreme.
Because you
But-
live on a farm.
But if you've got a
you'll
well-trained
you lose
sheepdog-
one pig, and you move on the next day, and you take care of the rest of the
Well,
pigs.
I mean,
That's-
I just I grew
You
up, going to my parents' farm and their cattle and random dogs there all the time. But just that scene by itself, I don't care if like you're in a farm or a city or they were your dogs or they weren't your dogs. That's why I think it's strange there's no photo. But maybe it was so shocking, so disturbing. You know, it's 1986. It's not like you have a cell phone anyways. You just want to forget that it ever happened, and it's like a family secret because it's so disturbing. That makes sense
Maybe.
to me.
Get a shovel.
George, what were you going to say?
If you have a well-trained sheepdog, that dog is expensive and very difficult to replace. Some of those dogs are worth money. Pet dogs, okay, not so much. But if that dog is actually working on the farm, guarding your sheep, making sure that they're safer from wolves and stuff, that's worth a lot.
Well, and that's what I'm assuming those kind of dogs are. It's a ranch. So I'm assuming they're ranch dogs that help wrangle cattle and do those things that you just mentioned. And my question, Jazz, being a former farmer, if you came out and you saw, it's not like just a random accident once every 12 years. 3 of your dogs, 3 at the same time on the same day, like that wouldn't raise some alarm bells on the farm? You guys would just kind of shrug that off?
Oh, no, that would raise huge alarm bells. I'm just asking, what are your options, particularly back in that era, if you call the police and go, 3 of my dogs are dead?
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the state police around there are going to be like, well, that sucks. We'll come out and take a look.
Yeah.
Oh, you got 3
Maybe.
dogs that are dead, you know, and it's like, well, we also had 2 murders last week. You know, we got some shit we got to take care of.
Yeah.
You know, I just, again, I don't want to go back to the Japan Airlines thing, but having lived in that environment, you'll lose a lot of animals. And I don't think that the police immediately are like, we need to drop everything and start an investigation and turn it over to the FBI so we have records for this podcast and this show in 2021 that we're going to be able to talk about this because this guy's 3 dogs are dead.
All right,
I'm
that's
just
fair.
saying,
That's
you know,
fair.
I grew up
it's
in
fair.
that era in the farms. You know, it's like it was terrible. You feel terrible about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of a record there is. You know,
I just figured the cops in Utah would be pretty bored, and they I think that would be something. Like, something happened at Skinwalker. Oh yeah, let's go check that out. You know, like I don't know. I feel like they might have been a little excited, but anyway, let's move on. Okay, so this gentleman also talks about a peach object coming out of the sky through a portal, which I think you're going to like, Cristina, when you do catch up. And he talks about how it scanned the property, looked like it was almost what Christopher Mellon was discussing with the triangles, how it's like almost mapping, like it looked like it was mapping the property. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
I'll let George take over for a minute.
Yeah.
Do that.
And then let's see here, and said, okay, so then they go to the thermal expert. They start setting up the camp. They start setting up all their equipment. Nightfall hits, and I also noticed, and I think Dragon had mentioned this the other day on Carl Vibe's channel. And I want to ask him about this because he said it was a hot night the first time they caught it on thermal. And a lot of these guys are wearing coats. And when they went to the radar thermal imaging, in this episode anyway, and this could be a completely different week, so maybe obviously weather changes, right? But it was 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature change went up to 47 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a pretty chilly night.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that could, and I saw the same jackets from that night on Travis from the previous episode, from episode 4, from when they first filmed this thermal imaging stuff. So I think the temperatures, I'm thinking, were pretty similar. Just because Travis had this big jacket. I was like, wait a second, I thought it was a warm night. So maybe, I'm not saying Dragon's lying, but maybe he was mistaken with the temperature of the night. From memory, but it seems
it was a
year
year ago for them, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point, Cristina. I always forget that. Yeah, they filmed this last summer, or or early summer into fall. So those, I know nights in Utah get pretty chilly because it's a desert. So that's what happens in a desert. It usually cools pretty significantly. But it was interesting to see that the thermal expert, once they started, and I mean the temperature this time, instead of going down, it went up. That was pretty weird. But what I found interesting was the thermal expert was like, yeah, I've never seen a temperature change that rapid in the thermal imaging that I've been working with for however long. So I found it interesting that the expert was also kind of like, oh, that is interesting, this temperature inversion. So what did you guys think of that moment?
Yeah, it's so funny because I was mentioning this to you guys in the past, or in the pre-show. Whenever I watch Skinwalker, have you guys ever seen the Polar Express?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the Polar Express, the whole theme of the movie is about this kid who doesn't want to be fooled, right? And he can't see the magic because he doesn't want to be fooled. And so every time I watch Skinwalker Ranch, I'm that kid who's like, y'all are messing with, like, you're absolutely 100% trying to fool me, and I don't want to be fooled. And I always wonder, and I always wonder to what extent these experts are being coaxed or ask questions on camera that try to pull out the information that they're trying to get. And so when
let's be
you
clear.
want to end up on the show, right? Yeah. And if you're a big serious debunker type, you may not, make the cut, right?
Yeah, right. And then every, questions are based on answers. If you ask the right question, you're going to get the answer that you're looking for.
Right.
If you also, ask it incorrectly, that's your fault.
FYI, this show has, not only that, this show has writers. Understand that. This show has writers. Look at the credits, which, by the way, I did. We're going to go over it at the end of the show because I found some interesting stuff in the credits.
Okay, well, I want to complain to one of the writers about this whole dog thing still.
Yeah.
I'm still upset. But then it makes me question, how many roadkills are there? Like animal victims and animal victims to do with coyotes. Are they classified as just animal death stats? Because it seems like it wasn't taken seriously, and I want to complain.
Yeah, it's a fair complaint, Cristina. But here's the thing. It was a long time ago, so we can't hold the feet to the fire. But the cool thing is that they now got, I think, emus on property. So if these emus get crushed, I mean, I'm hoping there'll be some cameras around this time, to catch this anomaly. I hope they don't, but I kind of hope they do, so we can get some pictures.
I'm going to edit that as a soundbite for you.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, just so.
Yeah, and send it directly to PETA. So let's move on.
Did anyone else think that the dog spot looked awfully lot like the cow spot?
I didn't think about that.
I didn't notice that. I did notice it was on a road. But then again, they drug that cow out away from the ranch.
That the sheriff said went over here. This.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't notice that. I'd have to go back to watch.
Did it? Same bushes, but then again, it's all the same.
It's all the same. Yeah. It's a desert with bushes. It's some of that terrain is going to look the same. Let's see here. So we're halfway through the hour. Michael, should we reset the room? Let's see. Is Jazz back?
Jazz
okay, there he is. All right, I got him. Sorry, rather. Okay, so you're muted, Jazz. We can't hear you. There you go.
Sorry, my wife is not rolling a joint. She's allergic to marijuana.
No, I know. She's knitting. It's clear.
Well, somebody asked that, in the chat.
Oh, did they? Okay, I didn't see that. Yeah, no, she's knitting. Okay,
that's like a 20-minute joint roll right there.
That's what are you making, by the way? Oh, socks. Are those for you or are those for Jazz?
Yeah, those are for me.
Oh, I wish they were for Jazz.
Yeah.
Do you make dolphin socks for Jazz at all?
Oh God, please make a pair.
Wrong kind of thing. I did make him
Dolphins
a
have flippers, Michael. Flippers. They don't need socks.
I meant dolphin socks for you, Jazz, with dolphins on them.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Yeah.
I may knit him a toy dolphin sometime, like I knit him the alien autopsy doll that he played in once.
I have an alien autopsy
Can we see it?
on my wall
At some
that
point.
George knitted and made into an entire display. Of the
It's
alien
like a
autopsy.
diorama.
That's
No, it's an
absolutely
actual
okay.
three-dimensional complete alien being autopsied.
Oh,
And
you
she
got to
knitted
take a
the
picture of
whole
this.
thing.
You got to
Okay,
take a
gotta
picture of
show
this and share it on Twitter because that's gonna
right.
be fun. Okay, so then the next thing that happened. This is where the show goes bonkers. Okay, so
Should we? So you did say we were
oh
at the half hour mark.
that's
So
right.
real-
Let's reset the room. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So real quick, just for those of you just joining us, the George is not rolling a joint; she's knitting. The George is the wife of the infamous Jazz Shaw, who you can see on your bottom left of the screen. We've also got Cristina Gomez from the Debrief and Shifting the Paradigm, and we've got UFO Jane from that weird UFO show. We're talking about Skinwalker Ranch today, season 2, episode 5, and Luis, where are we at?
Yeah. Well, we got a $10 donation. Thank you for the donation, Billy Pemberton. And it's a great question. Why does the cast wear the same clothes every day? Before we answer that question, because it is a good one, I just want to say real quick, make sure you like, subscribe, share the channel. On Friday, we got John Greenwald, 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and then followed by Christina's show, Shifting the Paradigm, at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Jane, when is your next show? Do you have a schedule yet on your show?
I will get one.
Okay, well, when you get one,
I'm working on a pretty big video right now that I'm excited to post next week.
I can't wait.
What's it about?
I can't
Yeah,
wait.
I'm working toward getting a schedule. It's
No
like-
worries. Well, just let me know like a week out, and we'll make sure to put your show into our our little 80s promo. It'll be cool.
But UFO
Thank you.
Jane, do you want to tease the topic?
Yeah, maybe
real quick?
tease the topic.
Okay, well, let's just say I went to Disney World pretty recently, and I kind of couldn't stop thinking of UFOs and disclosure while I was there. So digging into some of the connections with Disney and NASA, and it's a big one. There's a
lot of
Oh
connections.
yeah, there's a lot of connect. Well, I mean, Cape
forward to
Canaveral
it.
is right down the street from Disney World, basically.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there. But okay, Christina, can you also
Everybody,
tease?
By the way,
Yeah.
everybody visit Jane's channel.
Yeah.
I owe her a big debt. Last November, after I'm in my 60s, never saw a UFO. George and I saw our first 2 UFOs last November, and we filmed them. And Jane put the videos up on her site.
I was walking this girl, and when I saw her, and when I saw the videos, and I had stopped, and took the video, and unfortunately she moved, so it's like, okay, stop filming.
But we got that video that she took and the one that I had 3 days before last November, and Jane published both of them, and she did a really good job with them, I thought.
Yeah.
I'm afraid
Well, by the way,
I haven't solved it yet, though, Jazz.
that's it. Well, most of them are unsolvable, Jane.
that's
So
how it
that's
goes, yeah.
okay. But everybody's links is in the description below, so definitely check everybody out. And yeah, so let's continue. So this is when the show went off the rails. Okay. Thomas Winterton is looking at the house through was he looking through a thermal thing?
It was,
Or was that infrared?
No. It was night vision, I believe. He was
Okay,
looking through.
so through his night vision thing, his kaleidoscope, he's got a different angle from everybody else. Okay, and through his little whatever scope he was using, he sees a flash in the window of the house, and he bolts to the house. He's like, "Oh, there it is again!" And Caleb saw it, and so he bolts to the house. Travis is watching through the thermal going, "Oh man, they're all running to the house. This is crazy." And what y'all see down there? So they get down there, and of course, nothing's there. They cut to, somebody running in the bush with an infrared camera. Like it's very Ghost Hunters, very Blair Witch. And so they get inside the house, and it was the most hilarious thing. One of the thermometers that they set up, okay, it was in the window that Thomas Winterton saw this light flash. And when they get to the house, that thermometer is laying on the ground. It fell over. Oh, right? It sounds crazy. And then somebody says, okay, show me exactly how it was set up. They pick it up off the ground and they literally leaned it on a windowsill. Like, it was so
I didn't even catch that.
a gust of wind could have knocked that thing off of the wind. It was on a maybe 4-inch deep windowsill. So a gust of wind could easily knock this thing on the ground, and that could have been the flash he saw, right?
Oh man.
But wait.
No,
There's
I don't
more.
know why that would be the flash.
I didn't say it was. I said it
Okay.
could be.
All
And
right.
then I was going to say, but wait, there's more. As they're investigating the thermometer on the ground and how did it happen? How did this thermometer resting on a windowsill get knocked over? Big mystery. Travis... or excuse me, was it Travis? Yeah.
Yes, it was
Travis, what's his last name? Why am I forgetting it? Taylor.
Taylor.
Travis
Taylor.
Taylor.
Yes.
I always want to say Travis Tritt.
Yeah, Travis
Walton.
Travis Walton. That's what I was going to say.
Travis
Tra-
Walton.
And this guy holds a PhD in optical science, engineering, aerospace systems engineering, and a master's degree in physics and astronomy. This is Travis. This is what blows my mind. I don't understand.
And I
Travis-
listened to him speak at Alien Con like back in the day, and he's a good speaker, and I think he's like legit credentials. He even talked about like
saying.
experiment,
Credentials are
like with
legit.
his classmates. That was like legit, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that guy sees something again in the darkness. Nobody else sees it. Then Thomas Winterton runs out there. He's like, I see it too! And then just bolts out into the darkness. Again, we get our Blair Witch moment.
Not on
With the-
camera. It's not showing up on camera.
Nothing showing up on camera. They're not moving any of the 15 instruments that they set up to see it, to maybe catch something on it. And nothing scientifically is being done other than let's chase it.
Or
on
here, take
foot.
my camera. You see it?
Yeah.
Take my camera.
Okay, so this is
You
okay.
people are such a bunch of debunkers. Oh my god.
Yeah. So okay.
And
Go,
my
George.
favorite quote of the whole episode.
Yeah.
Those guys are just running around like idiots.
Yeah. Oh my God. He actually said that.
He did.
He actually said that. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that's really killing me about Travis Taylor is he started season 1 with not believing in any of this stuff. And then he had some things happen to him. I thought the radiation exposure was the most interesting by far.
Destroyed my cord.
That's okay. Oh, what happened?
The dog.
Oh,
We can hear
no.
you. It's okay.
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Really, Luis? I just want to ask you,
Yeah.
since you're launching into this, did you believe that? Did you think he didn't believe any of this before the first season? He was a total skeptic.
Well, that's the way.
He
know
talked
any
about
of
it at
this?
Alien Con. I will say that I remember them talking about it on a panel, like live together. And obviously, it could still be a shtick, but it wasn't like with the cameras on them and everything. And it seemed sincere, like that they just almost maybe that they even didn't like each other early on, or
Yeah.
So.
Well, they were definitely busting each other's chops. I mean, Dragon talks about Travis Taylor's, huge trailer that he's got on set. So he's definitely like the top, as they say, the top of the list, of the cast list. Whoever's at the top usually is getting paid the most, or is the most important person of the cast.
Get the
So
best snacks in there.
they get the best snacks, they get the biggest RV, they get the biggest dressing room, they get the closest parking spots, like all of that
They
stuff.
get a shower.
They get a shower. I think he even gets to change clothes. Oh, by the way, we didn't answer that question. Why don't they change their clothes? Like, the dragon is dressed in the exact same thing every single time. And so is Thomas Winterton.
That show, not this show.
What do you mean? No, not this show. The Skinwalker. Okay, George, come on. What are you doing to me here? So
That's what I thought. You were doing. It's okay.
Nothing with the UCR versus
no. I mean, well, we wear the same shirt and tie. At least I do. But
I agree with whatever George said. So
yeah, but no, okay, but like it's crazy that Travis has gone from, at least the way the show was edited, it seemed like he was very doubtful. He had a lot of doubts, and then season 1 happened, and then maybe that sort of started changing his thinking. But this season, I think he has seen something in every single episode, and he's the first one to see it. He yells at it, and then we get shaky camera. Man, that was weird.
It definitely wasn't a monster, but it wasn't an animal.
At one point, he goes, "It was bipedal, could have been quadpedal. I don't know."
You got to work on your accent because it's got to have more twang in
more
there.
twang. He's got. Well, I'm sorry, George. It's just it's. I gotta whip it out of left field, But it's dude. It's I don't know what's happened. Like, is this?
It's a honestly fucking caravan of clown show, dude. That's what it is.
The way it's hitting me, okay, because I watch it without commercials too, which is great. So when you watch these things back to back, you start to see patterns, and the pattern is he's seeing something every single show. First it was a portal, then it was an animal, then it was a blob that could have been bipedal, quadrupedal. I mean, he's seen it all. The UFO at the table, like that's 4 different things in 5 episodes, and it feels like production in him had a meeting and we're like, okay, we need to make this.
If you give me $1 million, I will believe it.
I don't know if it was $1 million. I'm not saying it was a payoff, but I think there was a discussion being had of, hey, we got to spice this up a little bit. This year is maybe they weren't catching as much, so they're like, maybe if Travis, if you spot something, call it out. You know what I mean?
Really
call it out.
Here's what George
really
and
loud.
I discussed, and I want to ask Cristina and Jane in particular about this, because George and I had the male-female discussion going on about this. Do either of you, Jane and Cristina, do either of you think that this looks a lot more legitimate than Finding Bigfoot? I assume you both watched Finding Bigfoot.
There are so many different shows on Finding Bigfoot, so I can't remember the exact one. But I would say, because they are doing scientific studies, because they're trying to add some credibility, having Travis Taylor as one of their stars, it does seem more legitimate, more credible, even if bits and pieces are staged, and maybe a bit more than some of these other Finding Bigfoot TV shows that they never ever catch anything, which is always disappointing, and it's always a lot of screaming and night footage.
Jane?
Yeah, I think that's fair. This felt very Finding Bigfoot-y. I've mentioned before, I know Cliff from Finding Bigfoot, and I know he's a legit researcher, and, Travis Taylor could be behind the scenes. I see less of the theatrics, actually, in the Finding Bigfoot, to be honest. I see a little more kind of natural human dynamic of, in the woods, than I see more putting on airs in Skinwalker Ranch, and more playing into these characters. It's kind of like, and I don't know if people are familiar with Simpsons, right? Homer started off kind of dumb, and then people liked that, and so he got dumber and then that took off, and it's still running today. So I don't think it's that necessarily Travis Taylor's being insincere. I do think he's a believer in the phenomenon, which is probably why he's along for this ride and feels good about it. Yeah, I definitely think he's getting some notes, and it just went to a whole other level. I feel like this episode, he's really flown the coop here.
I hate to say this, but wait, there's more.
No, there's more. He's getting older.
Well,
we got to see him grow up in front of our eyes and experience a moment of aging on the show, which I'm quite familiar with. But we got to see him go through it for the first time when he couldn't think of the right words to say. Yeah,
well, he couldn't think of the right words to say, and then he finds this strange signal. Yeah, like this strange signal. I was going to ask if anybody knows how a spectrum analyzer works because okay, great, because I have a question for you. Dragon, so the signal pops up, and then Dragon asks what would cause that. I swear to God, Travis Taylor's answers, I don't know. I don't know. Well,
And
how do you not?
Poor Dragon too, because Dragon's all like, maybe we need to check out our physiologies. Like, we need to take care of you. And he's like, I feel right as rain, and I just want to make sure you're okay, Travis. And fucking Travis over here bullshitting his face
Some
off.
of the eye rolls from Dragon in this episode were classic. But what I was going to ask, Jazz,
he's iconic altogether.
And you can
his
tell
small one-word quotes, like, they should be on T-shirts.
They
really should.
amazing. And
they really should.
And the fact that like you see his facial expression, and then what you think he's going to say based on that facial expression is not what he says at all. He says something so super nice and like, caring and thoughtful, but what's on his mind is not what he's saying.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so either. And I'm not going to
expressions.
Yeah, his expressions are priceless, and this is what made the show for me. This is like why it was the most entertaining, because I finally got some Dragon this episode where he was like, ain't having it, like especially when Travis got sick. But real quick, because I want to try and finish this up in the next 5 minutes, even with our scores, because we still got UFO video of the day. Jazz Spectrum Analyzer. Can I say if they're inside that trailer? And production is, say, getting drone shots on some part of the ranch, and they don't know about it. They're just getting B-roll while these guys are filming inside of and looking at this spectrum analyzer. Can a drone or something like that give a signal off to a spectrum analyzer like that? Like, what sets off a spectrum analyzer? How does that work?
That was the one part of the show where I had no jokes to make.
Okay.
Where I was sitting there watching it and talking to George. I worked in that area for a long time. If they weren't faking it, if they weren't showing a spectrum return that was totally faked and bogus, I have no idea what would cause that.
Interesting.
Nobody builds a transmitter that covers that wide of a band with that much of a distortion.
Yeah.
There's no point to that. There's no reason other than to just. I'm not saying it's impossible to do it. You could probably do it if you just wanted to blanket everything that was going on in a specific area. But when you pick up a loud, banging transmission, it's generally on one frequency or a small band of frequencies. You don't cover the entire RF band.
Speakers.
Exactly. Well, speakers.
Well, we know that
in
an
general.
electromagnetic pulse would do that.
Well, yeah, an EMP. If you got hit by an EMP that would come from the sun, for example, that would cover the whole thing. Trying to build an artificial generator of what they were showing. I'm not saying you can't do it.
Yeah,
but
it'd
boy,
be.
you would need an effort.
I'll tell you what.
I liked that more than the rest of the show.
I would be
interesting.
100% honest with you. That was the most interesting part of the show for me. Was
It
sitting in the trailer and watching Travis work the instruments.
I agree. Yeah.
Like I thought, I was like, finally. I was like, yeah, you could see his science brain working, Jane. Right? Like he was. He's like, oh, let me see which way that thing's pointing. All right, well, let's. It's pointing southwest. Let's try northeast. And then it was awesome. And I was like, Jesus, this is what this show needs, man. Like if it could be. The entire hour can be that, and I would be enamored and over the moon with this show. But then what ends up happening is Travis he has a brain fart, and then he can't talk or complete a sentence.
He's never had that happen before.
Never in his life.
Welcome to my world.
Oh my God, that's like every 20 minutes. I mean, just watch this show. I usually have one.
Hey, Luis. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
There we go. Right
What was I
there.
saying? So, no, but like it was crazy because then Dragon's like, well, I'm gonna go over there, and then he gets over there, and he's like, what's going on? I really don't like this. Dragon did not like what was happening. He's like, I want to end this right now. This experiment ain't worth your life. And so then he's like, well, maybe I just need to go outside and get some fresh air. So then he goes outside, and it gets worse. And he's like, well, maybe I need to go into this, silo, this metal silo.
Faraday cage.
The metal silo is fair.
What was hilarious though is the second he stepped in, and he's like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me! I feel better."
Did you notice though? He had a water bottle in his hand. So the thing is, you don't feel good. You drink a little bit of water within minutes. You often will feel better. And so I wonder, did he drink the water in the silo?
No, he drank the water. I remember I wrote it down. He stood up. The first thing he did was stand up, and he's like, I'm going to get some water after he had the brain fart. Okay. So that's the first thing he did. He had it before the silo, so maybe by the time he got there, it kicked in.
Yeah.
But it was just the drama. The drama that they put to this moment was so over the top. It absolutely took me out of the science aspect of it, and I was like, here's Travis again. Another strange thing is happening to Travis. It's like, dude, like, what is going on this season with Travis Taylor? And by the way, Thomas Winterton starts getting a headache. This is something I pointed out in my review season 1. Why is Thomas Winterton working on this ranch? Like, Michael, did you see the recap they did of how his head exploded? Like,
dude, they've done that recap. I've never seen season 1. I've only seen season 2, and I've seen that recap 3 times.
Yeah, it's like it was a huge medical thing, right? And it only happens on this ranch. So why don't you take him off the ranch and go give him another job on one of your other properties? Why are you putting this man's life in danger? Why? Give me.
Well, because 1, either he loves it, he loves working there, seeing all the weird stuff, or 2, it's really good pay, and it's worth the injuries.
I mean,
Amen,
damn, girl. I mean, look, if I own the property, I was gonna say, if I own the property, I would tell him, sorry, I can't have you on here. You're liability. Like, if you get hurt, you could sue me. Like, I'm sorry, you got to go. Like, and I would give him another job just on another property, same pay, nothing changes. Just you can't come here anymore because your head swells up like a melon when you do sometimes, and I don't want to pay for the medical bills. And also, it's also kind of an experiment because if you put him on another property and it happens again, then it wasn't because of Skinwalker.
I don't want to be this guy. I really don't.
Be that guy. And then we're going to read this question.
If you're going to get hit by RF radiation to the point where immediately you're going to feel effects.
Yep.
We had a previous show where we talked about radar systems. I worked on an aircraft carrier where if you stood up on the top deck next to the antenna where the air search radar was blasting out RF radiation to the point, and I'm not making this up, you guys can go Google it, where if you rattled the chains on the chamber to the door, into the area right below that radar, at night you could watch sparks fly from it. Wow. It was that strong. You know what? I never felt any ill effects, and I'm in my 60s. Okay, you need a lot of RF radiation before anything really serious happens to you. I was watching the impulses they were measuring. Yeah, that's alarming. I would like to know where that was coming from. I don't know how you generate that. But boy, you need a lot of energy before you can just take a human being down. Because I worked in front of radar antennas for years. I'm still here.
Do you think that certain people might have more sensitivity to radars?
Yeah, it's possible.
Could be.
But I know, like, if someone is close by to a mobile ham radio setup, and they can have like an amplifier, like they have an amplifier burner. Even at 10 watts, if it's like within 100 feet, it could bleed across the spectrum. And I mean, I didn't see the show yet, but I have a friend who is into ham radio, like who works ham radio, and he says that he can knock into people's TV signals in the hood.
In the hood.
In the hood, yeah.
Okay, so real quick, we're gonna read this $10 donation, and then we're gonna go to our final review. Christina, you can't give us a final review because you didn't watch it.
Well, can I give one based off what you guys
Sure.
said?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Okay, so Billy Pemberton with a $10 donation says, you think that the producers or the writers would take feedback from shows like this podcast? Like when the Dragon was on the podcast, he would go back and tell the guys, we look like a-holes on TV.
But they're entertaining assholes.
Yeah, I don't think they look like a-holes. First, look, we've got to always preface these reviews with the Dragon.
We love Dragon.
None of these guys, Travis Taylor, Thomas Winterton, Brandon Fugel, none of these guys edit the show. They don't film it. They're not. Well, one of them is a producer, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Who's the producer?
Well, Brandon Fugel is an executive producer.
Of course.
But I also wanted to let people know that just because you're an executive producer doesn't mean you have final say on what goes in the show. He gets
or
that
you have time to be
Correct.
editing shows.
No, that too. But an EP credit is well, it's a credit that's given a lot of times to people who have a big asset in the show. In this case, the ranch. So he gets that EP credit. That does not mean he has anything to do with the editing, the processing, the marketing, none of that stuff. So I just wanted to point that out because look, it's a fun show, and we're gonna make fun of it, but we're trying to find the nuggets out of it, and unfortunately this season is not giving me the nuggets I kind of wanted. It's just giving me a lot of entertainment. So with that said, let's start with George. You're new to the show, so let's start with your score. We've got two. You're familiar. We've got two rating systems. We've got our science score from 1 to 10, and our entertainment score. Which one would you like to give us first?
I think the science. Well, I'd have to give a 5.
Okay.
Generous.
I would like to see the Travis radar antenna again, only have more of them so that you can definitely tell a direction that something's coming from. I like the fact that there was repeatability of one of the experiments, but I'd like to also know what the baseline is, what the actual equipment is that's being used and added to. It would be nice to have more science, but there actually, I felt, was more science in this episode than there had been previously. As for entertainment, I'll give it a 6.5. I didn't play with the phone. I actually watched most of the episode twice. So, it was pretty good.
You watched the episode twice?
Well, yeah, because I watched it live, and then I walked the dog and went to bed and fell asleep halfway through. So you go ahead and watch the whole thing and rerun right after I get home from work, so before I could be on the show. Here.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, thank you for your score, and thank you for being here. Okay, so Jazz, let's follow up with you. So, quick score if we can.
Science 3.
Okay.
Entertainment 4.5.
Ooh, wow, a little on the lower end today. Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't impressed.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That's fair. Jane, what do you feel?
I'm giving it a 9.5 for entertainment because I lost it at the lab. But I'm giving it the lowest score I've ever gone for science. So it was at the cost of the science.
Yeah.
Travis Taylor was just so ridiculous in this, and he was so entertaining, though, in my opinion. But yeah, it was at the cost of a science, even though there was like a lot of science, I guess, kind of going on. I think maybe I'm just getting tired at this point in the season of like the throwaway like moments where we're not getting any follow up, where we're not circling back to things that were brought up earlier. So I don't feel like we're making the progress I would have wanted scientifically. So I'm gonna give it a 2.
Ooh, okay.
Wow.
But I've been like giving it 3, 4, maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, okay, all right, cool. That's an interesting score. All right, Christina, blind score. Before
Christina goes, we have a paying commenter. Gil 1AS. What would Jazz give a 10? show me the bodies.
Me. You'd give me a 10. Duh.
Well,
Duh.
George always gets a 10.
There you
But,
go.
you know,
There you go.
show us the million bodies, you got a 10.
Okay, fair. All right, Christina, what do you think?
So I wouldn't rate it in numbers, but I will say this. You guys make me want to watch it right now, even before eating my ice cream.
There you go.
That's
Wow.
pretty big.
Okay. But do you want to give a score? Just a blind score. What do you? Okay, let's go. Entertainment score. What do you think it would be
Okay, what I think it would be,
based off of our description of the show?
based off of what y'all said,
Y'all.
a solid 6.
Okay. And science.
For the science, maybe a 4.
Okay. All right. That's a good blind score. All right, Michael. What do you think?
Well, this is the first time, as you pointed out, Luis, that they actually repeated an experiment. So part of the scientific method is measuring, repeating. So I'll give it an additional point for that. So I'm actually going to give it a 3 for science.
Wow.
I mean, that was like the only thing about
I'm with ya.
this that was scientific was that they repeated an experiment.
Right.
But they could have also like Rick rolled, the UFO. They could have played anything, right? Like on those speakers, right? To see if they got the same.
Oh my God! How funny would it be if they pumped out Rick Ashley?
Okay, so I want to speak directly to Rather right now because he's saying, "Come on, there's so much science."
And Rather, come on, we got to get Rather's score.
Yeah, Rather,
No,
come on. And
George and I are leaving. I'm not getting in a fight with Rather.
Well, I just want to say that there's a difference between lots of cool tech and science and the scientific method. So that's the reason why I give it a low science score. Now, if we were going to give it a cool tech score, I can give it a much higher score, but I'm not going to do that because I'm giving it a science score. So I'm going to give it a 3. Entertainment, as insane as Travis was this evening, it was hilarious to watch him run around like a chicken with his head cut off and tell other people they were running around like chickens with their head cut off. So I give it a 7 on the entertainment scale.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Okay. I had thought long and hard about this one. I'm going to give the science. I'm with Jane. It went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs at the end. There were some really, really brilliant. It was sometimes it was some of the best science I'd seen, but the rest of it was insane. So I'm going to give it a 2 for the science.
Ooh,
yeah,
harsh.
I mean, that's
Rather's head just fucking exploded.
Yeah, Rather's pissed, and we're gonna get him here in a second.
Before Rather shows up.
Yeah, well, by the way, we gotta end the we gotta end the show here in 3 minutes. Okay, so the entertainment score. This was the best episode of the entire season.
Really?
Yes, from an I mean, watching Travis see shit is hilarious. Okay, I laughed. I was laughing the whole time watching this. I was thoroughly entertained. It was the only episode I didn't look at my phone the whole time. I even we were supposed to have a meeting. I'm like, I can't have a meeting. I'm watching Skinwalker and I gotta get through this. It's insane. I'm gonna give it a 9 for entertainment.
Wow.
I was thoroughly entertained. Thoroughly entertained this episode.
Wow.
And I don't give these scores easy. So from an entertainment aspect, I was entertained. It was hilarious. Okay, so Rather, get in here real quick. Tell us why we're wrong on the science and what your scores are.
I mean, they're clearly doing science. They got spectrum analyzers. They have, FLIR cameras. They're doing all this. They might not be showing the actual scientific analysis on the show, but they're definitely doing science. They're Travis is involved. They're doing science. I give it a 9.5 on science.
Wow. 9.5, Rather. Like
10 for entertainment. This was the best week ever. I'm gonna say it.
Well, you can't go back on
Enjoyed it,
that.
sir.
Nothing can ever compare to this episode, then, Rather. There's no going.
I am glad
Don't
you
go back.
enjoyed
It
it,
could be
Rather.
double 10s. I'm waiting.
Wow, Rather.
Dang.
Wow, dude. Look at this. Bugs
You
Bunny
already spent
science.
your goods.
Come on, Rather. You gotta be kidding me. No way. I mean, Michael took off his tie, slammed his headphones on the ground. I mean, Rather. Okay, here's the thing, okay? They took all of these measurements, and I think this is where we're going to end it. They took all of these measurements, and they have not shared any of those results. Not on their website, not on any sort of platform where people can start looking at this data and analyzing it. Let's see what happens when the season's over.
Yeah, wait for the season finale. I'm expecting a big reveal.
Okay, well, I'm also expecting a big reveal. Rather, I'm glad you're really excited about this. Maybe we'll bring in Rather next Wednesday. Dude, I want to hold off before I get too excited on the show.
I'm just like the fact that you feel so excited about, like, I'm excited now to keep watching. Like, I was not excited to keep watching, but now that Rather has so much faith,
paid Rather to give it high reviews.
Yeah,
because now we have Dragon on the show. You know.
Yeah, exactly. But I was gonna say, I mean, here's the thing: is all of that data that they collected the previous season, they never shared it. It's not on the site. Like, there's.
And it's an entertainment show, but I think that they are doing real science with scientific instruments. They might not be sharing that with us, but someone's looking at that stuff.
It's an entertainment show.
It's an entertainment show.
Finding Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They may as well be measuring Barbie dolls.
Bigfoot. There you go, George. Oh God.
All right, guys. Well, with all of that said,
we gotta go.
We're gonna let go of George and Jazz Shaw. Thank you guys so much for doing this. Well, welcome to the show, George. You're welcome back anytime to talk about Skinwalker. I thought your notes were awesome, so thank you for being here.
Thanks,
and Jazz, I hope you didn't get too embarrassed this episode.
Dude, ask my wife. It's impossible to embarrass me.
Oh, challenge accepted, George. Challenge accepted, George. What? Do you have any juicy stories, Jazz Shaw stories before we go?
I got a drinking problem.
Yeah. Okay, they're both out of alcohol, so we'll see you later, guys. Thank you so much. Oh man. Okay, so Michael, would you like to do the outros today, please?
Oh my God, I would absolutely love to. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys, for the Skinwalker Ranch recap. Cristina Gomez, host of Shifting the Paradigm, producer, presenter for Debrief Dig Deeper for the Debrief Media Company. Make sure you follow her. Cristina, can you tell people the best place to follow you?
On Twitter at eyes_on_the_skies and on the YouTube.
And make sure you check out her show on Friday.
Whoa!
What?
Whoa! $100 donation!
Whoa.
What a fun! Not even a question. We don't have to work for this donation. It's just, here you go.
I want to thank NeuroStream publicly too, because he was one of my first Patreon contributors. So thank you so much, NeuroStream.
Dude, thank you, man. You guys, honestly.
Yeah,
pretty soon won't be driving an Uber soon. They make a huge difference.
So all you guys are amazing doing these things for all the shows that you participate in. It helps everyone so much.
Yeah, no, it's wow. Holy cow! So sorry, Cristina. I didn't mean to interrupt your.
No, that's exciting news.
No, it's on. No, it happens every show. We get a guy who drops in $100. It's crazy. I mean, I love that you guys love this channel. I look. Stick around, please. We love you. Trust me. But Cristina, can you give us a little tease about this Friday show, or do you have it locked down yet?
It's a mystery guest. You gotta show up and see.
Ooh,
mystery
guest. All right, cool. All right. UFO Jane or Michael, please.
Well, I just wanted to say, if you are anybody who is both interested in Disney and UAPs, you might want to stick around, because I think UFO Jane's got a pretty amazing video coming out relatively soon. So, UFO Jane, can you tell people the best place to find you?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, so just search UFO Jane on YouTube. That video will be out within the next week for sure. And also I'm on Twitter, TX UFO Sightings, Instagram, UFO Jane, TX for Texas, not UFO Janet X.
All right, UFO Jane, thank you so much for stopping by, my lady.
You're awesome, Jane. Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, can't wait. I can't wait for these these Skinwalker show to be over.
Yeah.
So we can get to some other stuff with you, because I think you're so valuable to the show, so we appreciate it.
Well, this is a blast. I look forward to it every week. So.
Awesome. Yes. Awesome. All right, my lady. We'll see you soon.
If you are a fan of breaking science technology, if you are a fan of the fringe hypotheses, and you want to see somebody who goes deep on these subjects, make sure you follow Rather Be Squidding. Rather, what's the best place people can find you?
Yeah, look me up on YouTube. Rather Be Squidding, or ratherbesquidding.com will get you there as well.
All right, Rather. Well, any final words on this Skinwalker show?
I'm glad there was no one science scores. That's
All right, fair.
I can't wait for next week.
I feel. I mean, I'm very concerned about my tie and its relationship with your score, Rather. But we'll that for another day, my friend.
For another day.
We'll look into that.
All right, my dude. Thanks for being here. Okay, Mikey. Wow.
Woo!
Good show. That was fun.
Great.
All right, let's
great chat.
Let's outro this thing. But where's my music, Rather? Oh, there you go. Look at him. His face is freaking out. There it is.
Let me mention to folks. Oh yeah, that's great. Let me mention to folks. So we've got Avi Loeb coming on the Singularity Lab very soon. It's actually going to be on I believe it's the 22nd of June. We're going to be talking about why fringe hypotheses are not met with scientific rigor in mainstream academia. So if you want to see that show with me, Louise, Kristen, and Avi Loeb, make sure you subscribe to the Singularity Lab. All you have to do is click the link in the description below. Then click the Singularity Lab, follow us, subscribe to us, click the bell so you're ready. You can join us live when we have that conversation. If you want to ask a question to Avi Loeb, make sure you subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to UCR, the Unidentified Celebrity Review, do so right now, or you may not leave. You may not leave.
Please do. Yep. Hit the subscribe, ring the bell, so that way you don't miss out on any cool conversations we're having. By the way, we're having one with John Greenwald from the Black Vault on Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're also going to have Graeme Rendall. And we're going to have Rather Be there for the interview. Michael will not be in town. He's got to go out of town for personal reasons. So it's still going to be a fun day. So definitely stop by on at 1 o'clock right here. Ring the bell, share the channel, like the video if you can, and also visit the Patreon, you guys. The Patreon helps me stay out of an Uber, helps me provide this show to you guys 5 days a week. Here Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Singularity Lab on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And also Friday, we've got Cristina Gomez laying down her not her brand new channel, her new episode of Shifting the Paradigm at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we basically have 2 shows for you that day. So yeah, stick around. It's going to be fun. Make sure you ring everyone's bell. The show is brought to you by BlueMountainChronicles.com.
Ring everyone's bell. I love it.
Ring everyone's bell. BlueMountainChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. I want to say aloha, goodbye, thank you, good evening. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all the likes, the subscribes, the sharing. The channel gets bigger every single day thanks to you guys out there. So I cannot express that enough. So until Friday, again, remember, no show tomorrow. Until Friday, we got John Greenwald. We'll see you at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Until then, again, you guys, stay safe out there. Peace.